Hey everybody, it's Andre Bagansky from Decrypt coming to you today with an interview with none other than Xen Baynham-Herd, Head of Global Growth for Base. How are you doing today, Xen?
Doing great, thank you.
We've got a lot to talk about between Base's international expansion and all the different places you've been within the past year. But, to start it off with a hot one, how do you think Base's token is going to impact your life personally within the next year?
Yeah, I think it's going to make it. Well, we're exploring the token, and so there's no set timeline, no set date, no set structure yet. We announced it to say that we're exploring it to make sure that we were doing things in the open and could collect feedback. I'm imagining I'll get more busy. I'm already pretty busy, but I think talk around tokens tends to accelerate things, and so I'm expecting growth next year to accelerate. And my job being global growth, I can imagine gets more busy as we try and expand into more countries and support more founders and builders.
That leads us to a great opportunity for an introduction. How about you tell everybody what you do, Xen?
So hi everyone, I'm Zen. I lead global builders at Base, and more recently we've moved that into a term called global growth. And what that means is I'm here to support all types of builders on Base, from founders to creators to traders and community organizers. It's the community that we're building. We call it the builder network, and we believe it will over time become a network state. So my job is really to grow Base globally and help build and grow this community of builders on Base.
And, I think one of my favorite things to ask people who have been in the crypto space for a while is, what was your aha moment when it came to crypto? For you, it sounds like it might be a little different just based off of your community focus when it comes to crypto.
Yeah, so I've been, around crypto nearly 10 years, or over 10 years now, I guess. I actually started off in an investment bank. I was working on a stablecoin project. In fact, it was one of the earlier stablecoin projects. My job at the time was a trader. I traded fixed income derivatives. And I saw this stablecoin project and I thought, that's really interesting. Now it's possible to create this like tokenized cash deposit. And I started working on this project in my evenings and spare time. It became a large project. I was at a bank called UBS, ended up being spun out as its own entity, this concept. And we worked with a number of central banks and large banks to create this thing called the utility settlement coin, which was an early wholesale bank stablecoin back in 2016. That led me down the rabbit hole of what crypto really was. And as soon as I believed that money was going to become digital, I felt like I had to go where that was really happening, that the banks weren't going to adopt it quick enough. And actually, it wasn't going to be a technology that banks were going to adopt anyway. It was going to be a new ecosystem, an entirely new financial system that we were building. And so that really was my aha moment. At that moment, I left the banking world forever, joined a crypto startup in London called blockchain.com, and then spent the rest of my career working on crypto.
Would you say that there's what is the one thing that you would say that you bring from the traditional finance world to your job?
I think I spent like 8 years trading fairly complex products, derivatives and structured stuff. And so a lot of the crypto industry is built around trading, particularly like trading innovations like perps, like certain types of derivatives. And so I guess I'm able to grasp that stuff quite quickly, which has been helpful. But it's mainly the consumer side that I focus on now, and helping builders and founders build for consumers in general. But it's nice to have that institutional background and trading background too.
Sure. When I picture like a trader, a professional trader, I picture somebody like hunched over their desk, and I picture like almost like an office setting. But you've lived a far different life over the past year, it seems, based off of your sort of social media activity. I couldn't figure out how many countries that you've gone to. So I'd love to learn about just like where you've been this past year and how that ties into your work.
Yeah, sure. So most recently, we did a trip called Base Around the World Asia, where we traveled to Asia mainly to meet the community, to meet the people building on Base and help support them. We started off in South Korea, in Seoul. We then traveled to Tokyo, Japan, then to Singapore, then to Malaysia. We spent time at Balaji Srinivasa's network school. And then the team went to Indonesia and also India. And so that was a fairly long trip. I will be traveling to Mexico, Brazil, and Argentina in a few weeks as part of Base Around the World LATAM, which will finish off at DevConnect, where we're doing a big demo day for the winners of Base Batches, which is a startup activation program we run. And the demo day will be for around 40 teams at the main stage at DevConnect, pitching to investors in the room to get funded.
Wow. One of the things that I'm really curious about is like what the best thing you've had to eat on your trip so far is.
Honestly, like a lot of airport food, eating on planes, hotel food, and canapes and like buffets at various events. So it's typically me just like running around trying to get hold of like the tastiest thing at 9 p.m. after we'd be doing a long meetup. I've got to say, India was particularly good though. So we spent time in Bangalore, and we did a breakfast dosa morning where we went around and tried different dosas. And dosas are really tasty. They're like pancakes. You dip into like coconut cream and other sorts of like hot sauces. Particularly great. So yeah, dosas from Bangalore, India were my particular favorite.
That does sound delicious, but airport food does not sound like this Anthony Bourdain sort of image that I have in my mind. I bring up Anthony Bourdain because he's somebody who often mixes culture and food, right? And in your capacity, like you're somebody who's been able to sample these different sort of cultures that you see, especially like within the crypto community on like different countries. And, I'd really love to get your sort of understanding of just how different the situation is for blockchain developers in some of the countries that you've been to compared to what people think of in the US as your typical dev experience.
So, I mean, our team is now like really global, right? So our team calls we have 30 to 40 people on the call all around the world. We do it typically around this time of day, which is like 2 p.m., 3 p.m. UK, so that the team in Asia can dial in the evening and the team in the US can just about get up early enough to be on the call. So like our team calls are like incredibly diverse. We have people from Africa, Asia, US, LATAM, Europe, India, and even there, it's great to see different cultures and different ways of doing business, and it's really enjoyable. And then when you travel to these different countries and meet builders, it's different, right? Different countries have different ecosystems, like different economies. For example, we have people in UAE, Singapore, London. I see these as startup hubs. We have like very strong startup culture, like people often move to Dubai to set up entities. Same as Singapore, London, and New York, and SF. And so there's a lot of capital, there's lots of talent, there's lots of help from VCs, accelerators. So these are like startup hubs. But then you might go to somewhere, we traveled to Malaysia, and there are some incredible founders in Malaysia. But it's not the same, it hasn't got the same capital availability as, say, Singapore. So a lot of the founders in these sorts of countries often move to Singapore or Dubai or London to set up entities. India was a great example of somewhere where I think there's like a whole spectrum of potential. So there's incredible founders, like a huge amount of incredible founders and builders in India. We have thousands of people building on Base in our group chats, like real builders in India as part of that community. But there's also a huge consumer market as well. Like India is obviously huge, and it's a huge opportunity both for the builders, but also for Base to serve these users. Markets like, say, Indonesia and Philippines, we see lots of developers. They tend to be working on smaller things than some of the people working on the larger startups in different countries. But there's also like tons of interest from consumers. They just want to use crypto. You might have seen the A16 State of Crypto report, which came out a few days ago. There's a really good slide where it shows international adoption of crypto. And one side you've got interest in trading tokens, and on the other side you've got like interest in using crypto. And what you'll see in that is the emerging developing countries, countries like perhaps Nigeria, Philippines, Indonesia, Pakistan, Brazil, and others are interested in using crypto, and also across other parts of Southeast Asia and Africa. But the top users of buying crypto and trading coins tend to be who you might expect. It's sort of the US, UK, Canada, I think. But also you have some crossover, right? Like Brazil is quite big on both. India is quite big. And so, yeah, it's fascinating, like looking at these different markets, and they're all very complicated, and it's hard to simplify in that way. And so I'm doing a great injustice to every country I've mentioned to simplify it in that manner. But that's often that's what I'm seeing on the ground.
It's fascinating to see you go there because, one of the questions I have noted is like this whole idea of number go up versus Constitution DAO is how I think of it in my mind. For people who aren't familiar, Constitution DAO during the pandemic, like a bunch of people got together, formed a DAO and tried to buy like a version of the US Constitution, a copy of the US Constitution. It didn't work out. But at the same time, it was like this sort of moment that I think really captured the spirit of like incentive alignment with crypto, the idea that like crypto ultimately is networks that can be used for human coordination just as much as they can be used for trading financial assets. And you talk about like how people in the East might be using crypto, and I think what you mean by that is like using it for payments is what it really sounds like. Using crypto for payments on one side of the world and really using crypto as a technology to trade assets on the other. Like, how do you balance that when it comes to your job and base, right, where this activity all takes place in just like one ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, so basis for everyone, and we mean that in terms of use cases as well as geography, right? So there's a huge amount of surface area that base covers, which is a challenge, of course. Like we're trying to serve the world and create this global economy. That's our goal. And so a global economy has many different aspects to it. I like to say that from a contribution point of view, you have founders who contribute to the network by building apps, and you have creators who contribute to the network by creating distribution and helping founders get to market. And you have traders and investors providing capital into these founders and also the creators as well. And different markets have different amounts of these types of people who are contributing. One very clear example where Base is looking to contribute to markets which are more payments driven is local currency stablecoins. So we're trying to grow adoption for local currency stablecoins in as many markets as we can. We have a lot now. I think it's around 15 or so across the world, and we want to get to more. And these local currency stablecoins are very important for a few reasons. One, I believe most countries don't want their entire economy to become dollarized through USD stablecoins. And so they want their own currency to have utility internationally, but also domestically. And secondly, the existence of local currency stablecoins unlock use cases which people can build up. You can have far faster settlement. You can have payments in, say, USD being immediately converted into local currency, and then so people can pay with one currency, get another one out. You need to have that atomic transaction to happen. You have to have a stable coin on both sides of that, USD one and stable one. And so we're very focused on this. We think it's really important for emerging markets to have their own local currency stablecoin. At the same time, I think dollar stablecoins are also very important, and that's another area we want to grow for different reasons. I think people use dollar stablecoins to manage risk, and potentially, I can imagine AI agents of the future choosing stablecoins to transact because it's quicker, programmable. You can do a lot more with it, and so I think us growing USD stablecoins and local currency stablecoins is a good example of us serving different use cases with similar types of products, which we're trying to help grow.
When you go down to Argentina, you should ask them about whether they're interested in stablecoins denominated in their local currency.
Well, yeah, I mean, you should ask. We got a country lead called Sebas in Argentina. He's amazing, and he has, he's on the ground. He can tell you what the situation is out there. But yeah, I mean, obviously the monetary system in Argentina is particularly challenging, to say the least. And I think domestically, people do want to hold other currencies apart from the local currency because it's been historically unstable and inflationary.
It's really interesting to see you sort of put an emphasis on stablecoins in local denominated currencies. And the reason why I find that interesting is because you've seen crypto projects really take like a global scope before. I don't have to be specific, but then you've seen like sort of a criticism in academia about like crypto colonialism, if you will, right? Where people use crypto networks essentially to expand influence and essentially like this arbitrage where you're able to get people, get attention and get talent from different areas. And really like sometimes that can be advantageous if you're a US company trying to bootstrap your product. Do you feel like the whole idea of offering a currency in that or a stable coin in that local currency like helps like push back against that, this idea that like by like having these networks really grow in these jurisdictions that you're essentially like facilitating like US dominance through the dollar or like soft power in some ways?
Yeah, so my view is like true community growth needs to be done locally. You need to
Mm-hmm.
have boots on the ground. That's why we have people physically all around the world, like physically in these countries, working in teams located in the countries we're looking to help grow. So you need people on the ground. You need the community on the ground, and you need to have buy-in from the people on the ground. Like people need to feel that it's working for them and that they are part of this economy, and it's not being imposed on them as well. I think there's a balance between providing opportunity and imposing like a particular order on a certain country.
Mm-hmm.
My view is, I think crypto is an amazing opportunity to provide this access to financial products, which hasn't been possible before. So this idea that anyone, anywhere can own a piece of this global economy is amazing. Like, and it's also amazing with USD stablecoins. Like, if your currency is unstable, having access to dollars is a huge thing. I think that's extremely important. But at the same time, you want to be able to support local businesses, local communities who potentially want to protect their own currency and
Mm-hmm.
have and want to make sure that their country is able to control their currency and their economy in a way that's best for their people as well.
You know, Zen, you talk about owning a piece of the modern economy, and I think it's a really interesting concept, right? Because if I'm like in another country and I see base, like I can see base as this idea where it's like, wow, like look at how thin this barrier is. Like I can jump to like the forefront of finance or something like that. Even Jesse Pollock on X, like his Twitter banner is like this map with like different plots of land on it, and that to me very much feels like a metaphor for being able to like own a piece of base in a sense. But like how do you sort of like reconcile that with this idea of like what are we actually owning here?
Yeah, well, it depends on the asset. I think crypto unlocks the ability for anything to become tokenized. And so it depends on what that thing is.
Mm-hmm.
What is a coin? Is it a coin issued by an app? Is it a coin issued by a creator? Is it a meme coin of some kind? Is it another like stable coin? What's the quality around that? And I think there's a huge amount of opportunity to obviously own assets, but also a lot of
Mm.
opportunity to educate people as to what these different things are and help people make the right choices and help people invest, time and energy into networks which are positive sum and growing and actually contribute value
Mm-hmm.
versus zero sum or potentially negative sum type projects. And because it is permissionless and open, like there's all of that stuff exists in crypto. And uh, the huge amount of opportunity can expose risk as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think the onus is on the leaders within certain ecosystems and across crypto to help educate people and help people make the right decisions. But it's their decision ultimately. They just need to be given the right information so they can be educated to invest time and energy in the types of tokens or coins which will help them and help them grow.
Yeah, no, I totally hear what you're saying about this idea of like almost I'm getting like echoes of Kevin Owocki, like this idea of regenerative finance, I think is what he talked about years
Mm.
ago, like this idea of like creating these feedback loops that are actually like sustainable for users instead of like as you mentioned like a zero sum game. Like I think of like some of these Telegram clicker games that we saw last year, where it's like everybody across the whole world is using this thing until like the token drops, and then these games just sort of fade off into the background. Really curious. I mean, if anybody could lay out a vision, it would be you. Like, where do you see Base like with like 5 years from now in terms of just how it integrates into people's daily life?
Yeah, I see. We like to say that base is a a bridge, not an island. And so I don't think it's a case of like trying to capture all these aspects of the market or like everything needs to be on base. I think it's that base is open and global. And it's something that many people around the world, like potentially billions of people, are using potentially without knowing it, because they're using apps and services built on top of it on base. And they're maybe also like using or browsing content or other sorts of like consumer type apps, which might also be built on base. Maybe they're using stablecoins for payments. They don't know it's on base, but they're paying for their coffee. Or maybe they're doing some trading and the execution is being done on a DEX on base. So I feel like base will, if we're successful, serve as the platform for this open economy. And the chain is really that the main platform aspect, but then we have also the base app, which we want to make a globally accessible on-chain everything app. So that could be the window that many people use to access things on base and things within the wider crypto ecosystem. And then we also have this thing called Base Build, which is our developer platform. And our vision is to have millions of developers using these tools to build new apps and startups which solve problems and help them earn income. So yeah, if we're successful, we built this global, open, accessible economy where we're serving both the underlying platform, the infrastructure, providing tools for developers, and providing apps and consumer services where people can come in and use crypto.
Thank you, Zen. I appreciate that. Like, it's really interesting to see the way you sort of outline that. One of the things, just sort of as like we're wrapping up here, I asked you at the beginning of the interview about Base's token, and I know there's only so much that you can say about this, right? But when I think about Base, I think of Base as being Coinbase's network. And I think of it as being Coinbase's network because it has a centralized sequencer, a sequencer that essentially like is responsible for ordering these transactions before they're posted to the underlying network. So you guys essentially like maintain control over the way people's transactions are facilitated to an extent. When I think of people launching a token, especially crypto projects, that's often talked about within the context of decentralization. This idea that you're putting ownership in like a group of people's hands. How are you guys thinking about the centralized sequencer and the notion of decentralization through the token on your perspective? Like how are you guys reckoning that? Because in some ways they feel conflicting.
So you're right. Base has been incubated by Coinbase, which provides a huge amount of benefit to Base users through all the things that Coinbase can offer and help drive that forward. I mean, Base is on a path towards decentralization. We reached stage one decentralization quite recently. We want to continue moving forward. The potential token that we're working on is part of this movement towards decentralization. And decisions around like the technical things you mentioned are a big part of that. The reason that we announced that we're working on and exploring this token so early is because we wanted to take feedback from people like you, builders, saying, hey, we think it'd be great if you did it like this. We want you to do this. We'd like you to maybe become more decentralized in this manner. Like we're taking that feedback and we're using it to design the right path forward. So I don't have an answer to that question because we're actually working on it right now. But I would say that anyone listening to this who has a view about how they'd like to see this done, like we're very open to hear this. And this is why we put it out there so early, is to gather feedback and really listen to what the community is saying.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Sort of as my final question, again about like the centralized sequencer. Like when you think about centralized sequencers in terms of like the business model that you see in traditional finance, I, I don't know if it's too far of a stretch, but like in some ways it resembles payment for order flow. And you see that among competitors like Robinhood, where that's their whole business model. That's how they can offer like zero brokerage fees. Do sequencer fees scale linearly to the point where it's like if more people are using base is going to get more sequencer fees in the same way that like payment order flow might scale linearly based off of the amount of users I have, or are there other considerations there?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of considerations there. Like I won't be able to do it justice in this time, and it's fairly technical. I
Okay.
wouldn't be able to give you a poorly thought answer to a very complex question.
Hmm.
I will say that Base, as a general group, has a number of revenue sources, and we want to, over time, obviously, make sure that what we're building is sustainable and that we can, make revenue, but also use that revenue to fund the growth of the network as well. And we're doing a lot of work to figure out the best way to do that.
Got it. Got it. Sounds like the topic of our next conversation, Zen.
Yeah,
Thank you for taking time out of your day in order to speak with me. Everybody who's still listening, I'm Andre Bagansky. This is Zen. Tune in for the next one. Thank you. Bye.
awesome. Thank you for having me on.